All right. Looks like we're live. Hopefully everything's working correctly. So it's Rob and Pete here Friday. We're wanted to give an update on what's going on this week. We had some new stuff come down the pipeline. A little bit of a not really a pivot, but an update on what we're doing with 1240. Can you clarify what's going on?
Yeah. So just in case anyone's unaware, 1240 is House Bill 1240. It's the assault weapons ban, as the state's called it, that prohibits just a myriad of weapons that the state has tried to deem, especially dangerous. So that case we brought in Grant County, it got moved to Thurston County. And right now what we're doing is we're working with folks, and we sent out kind of a call for help. And that help was to tell us your story through a declaration. A declaration is a formal document filed with a court for an individual to tell his or her side of the story. In this case, if I were someone who wanted to provide a declaration, I would say, first you reach out to declaration, singular, declaration, DECLARATION at smfjb.org. Send the declaration, or tell us that you're interested in telling your story. And that story really has to do with, hey, I purchased a rifle or one of these banned firearms ahead of the signing of 1240, which was April 25th of this year. And, my FFL didn't get it to me in time. I passed the background check on April 26th or later, or 25th or later, and now I'm prohibited from picking it up. Or we've had folks reach out saying, hey, I'm a disabled person, and I need these specific types of firearms because of recoil for hunting or for sport shooting or whatever the case is. And so we're getting these stories put together in declarations. We've had, I think, nearly 100 people reach out. And so some of you are calling us and saying, hey, you haven't responded to me. And that's greatly in part due to the fact that, one, we're doing everything we can to respond to the initial email, which is, hey, here's my story. Does it fit? Right? And so we're kind of combing through those facts, making sure that those stories fit, and then sending out a sample declaration. Most people are at that point where we've said, hey, we like what you have to tell us. It's helpful to the court. It clarifies the damage to the residents of Washington, and we'd like to file this with the court. And now folks are they've sent us a draft, and they're waiting on us to turn it back. Again, given how much time it takes to get through these, if you're waiting on us, I know sometimes we don't respond and say, hey, I've got it, right? Not going to just put that check. So most folks have received, we've received, and we just not responded. So we're in that process. And I'm excited because we could have a stack of declarations, this thick, that shows, hey, these people are disabled, and this is their only way to either carry, for protection, or to hunt, or regardless, sport shooting is protected, right? So, but especially when it comes to those protection, whether it's against an animal or for hunting, for food, sustenance, or whether it's to carry. I think those are going to be great stories to tell the judge. People who spent money and now they're out thousands of dollars. I've seen some of our potential declarants are $5,000, $3,500, $3,800. That's not like something to sneeze at. It's literally a paperweight sitting on their FFL shelf. Right? So that's where we are in 1240. We do have a hearing next Friday. We're trying to decide whether or not it is open to the public. I want to be clear about that in Thurston County. At the Thurston County campus. It's the county campus. That's where the Superior Court sits. So it's not going to Olympia. Well, it's in Olympia, but it's not going to the Capitol building. It's not going to that whole...
How close to the Capitol building is it?
A couple miles, I'd say, okay, give or take.
Not right.
It's not. I don't believe it's in walking distance, and if it is, pretty sure it's uphill. So at least one of the ways. So, certainly people are welcome to come out, show support. I don't know how big of a crowd could be in the room. When we file these hearings, when we have these hearings in Olympia, it's I call it a cattle call, right? Mm-hmm. There's a 9 to noon slot and up to 12 motions on docket. And those motions could be, bam, 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 bam. Mr. Jones isn't here. Miss Jones, we find in your favor, right? It could also be something else that's 30, 40 minutes long, which is what we anticipate our hearing to be. So, we're hoping to really have a successful hearing on the temporary restraining order, but we're prepping these declarations for the future motions, the injunctions, which is kind of a temporary restraining order on steroids.
If you had to put a timeline to this particular case, what do you the next couple times in court, what are you looking at? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously if we get a temporary restraining order, we're going to slow roll things, right? Because that's good for a minimum 14 days, but that is, it's been briefed up. Everybody's on notice. The judge could issue it kind of semi-indefinitely. So if we get a TRO, a temporary restraining order, next Friday, a week from today, then we don't have to plead this stuff out immediately. But if that's denied, utilizing these declarations, I think the quickest we could have it heard is about 2 weeks from the date that we file it. So we would want to file it early the following week, and then hopefully have it heard by right around 4th of July. Probably going to have to be after, because they only do the hearings on Fridays. And I know 4th of July is midweek, early week. Right. So, depending on how things shake out, we could have a preliminary injunction heard as early as probably the 1st or 2nd week of July. If we can delay it, that's a great thing, because the TRO has been issued.
Right.
That means that people are getting the relief they need immediately. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a busy July and August, let's put it that way. And obviously, if we don't get the TRO but get the PI, so if we don't get the temporary restraining order but get the preliminary injunction, then we're looking at an immediate appeal, because, the state can't ever lose.
Right. So we know our timeline. Do you know the other two cases that are in federal court? Do we have timelines on those yet? Do we know what they're looking at?
I think the Western District of Washington, I want to say they may have something that they could have heard as early as the end of the month. Not this month, June, but July. They could also appeal, which, now you're talking months. The case in the Eastern District, I believe that one is noted for hearing mid-July or that third week in July. So, in theory, if we get the temporary restraining order next week, we're the ones that will be on the leading edge. And even if it's denied and we turn around to do a 2-week, we might still be on the leading edge. Obviously, that means a lot of work for us. But, we brought this case because, one, we believe in the merits. And two, we have to do it. Someone's got to get this injunction somewhere.
Right.
And if it's us, great. If it's somebody else, as long as, whoever's first is first. We're all blessed by that.
Right. So if you're listening, if you're following along, the only chance of us actually celebrating freedom on the 4th of July in its full capacity is if we get our case heard and we get a favorable ruling in our case, right?
Yeah, and that would be the element that's heard this Friday, or the upcoming Friday, the 23rd. The preliminary injunction won't be filed until after, and it wouldn't be heard until after. So basically, it's success on Friday,
yeah.
or wait to celebrate.
So y'all know what to pray for. Y'all know what to be hoping for, is that we have a favorable ruling and that we can actually celebrate the 4th of July under some of our constitutional rights and actually still be able to exercise those.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that's what the Declaration of Independence was meant for, right? That's what the Constitution was provided for. Make sure that people know that we're looking up to God for Him to protect us and the rights He granted us, and the government's there to not infringe or impose on them, but to help support and sustain those. And obviously, that's not what we're seeing in this country right now.
Right.
So, yeah, we have so much other stuff going on, and I don't think we really want to get into it, but, we've got some decisions to make on our Hanford case. We've got some decisions to make on some other cases. They could be really long-lasting for, not just COVID litigation and fundamental health rights litigation, but also questions of, how does the U.S. Supreme Court see damages for violations of religious freedom? And that's, I know, again, we're kind of focused on 1240, but there's just a lot that's brewing that could really set up a bit of a course correction, if you will, for the state of affairs in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think folks sometimes forget like the magnitude, and quite frankly, I do. As the guy who's the lead attorney on all this stuff, or at least the head attorney, I might not be taking lead on the particulars. Sometimes I forget the magnitude of these cases, but the goal is to have long-lasting, heavy-hitting cases that I don't want to say restore our rights, but maybe support our rights.
Right. Well, we were focusing on 1240, so let's kind of take a step back and talk about what, best case scenario, we get a TRO in this next hearing.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, we're going all the way to Supreme Court.
Yeah, so really the next logical step again is note the preliminary injunction, have it heard early to mid-July, maybe as late July if we're getting really good declarations rolling in. But we could, and once the TRO is not an appealable decision because it's just, it's temporary in nature. It's not intended to be a final decision. But even the preliminary injunction, or we could even brief up a permanent injunction because we'll have shown the harm very well. If either the denial of either of those allows us to take it to the Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And we could even look at a fast track to the Supreme Court, but I've not baked that out with Austin, with Karen, or other attorneys.
Right. So just to kind of frame that up from a layman's perspective, from my perspective, not being an attorney, I like to think I bring some value, and at least not being something that is valuable in this case, I guess. We got a chance. Anybody that's sending us your declarations, or anybody that's supporting us monetarily, or even if you're just saying prayers, you got a chance to be part of these cases, not just 1240 that could possibly go to the Supreme Court, but how many others do you think that we have already? Hanford's right there.
Yeah, and that's not to really, claim that the state Supreme Court's not a big deal, but the Hanford case, if it goes to the Supreme Court, that's the United States Supreme Court. Like, that is the final stop of all stops. As far as anything else that we've got going, it's hard to tell. I could see it's really going to depend on what the judges have to say, right? Our 1705 case, we've got some questions that are, move it forward or appeal it, and both routes could lead us to the Supreme Court, but very different, right? 1240 is straight on the facts. Is it a constitutional violation if and we're not challenging moving it to Thurston? 1705 having been moved to Thurston, we could challenge that decision, which would then develop a whole body of law as to whether or not it had to be heard in Thurston. Or we could go on the merits and continue with the Second Amendment push. I think everything we do, again, stepping back, pretty much all cases that I would have an opportunity to go to the U.S. or state Supreme Court. The question becomes, with our limited resources, is it the right fight? How badly did the judge, in our opinion, err in deciding we're wrong, right? It's kind of a silly way to put it, but
right. No, like I said, as a non-attorney, as a citizen, it excites me what kind of action we can be taking, what kind of difference we can be making. I know a lot of people are frustrated that not much is happening here in Washington State. Our legislature has not done any favors for us anytime in the past 5 years, and it just keeps on getting worse and worse. And just to think that there's possibly some light at the end of the tunnel, that there may be some good decisions that can come. Unfortunately, we have to go outside of the state to get those. But that's what we can do. And I want to reiterate that anybody supporting us is part of that. You can pat yourself on the back for saying, you know what, I supported the group that's doing this, or I'm part of the group that's doing this, that's making a difference, that's standing up, that's fighting for our rights. And I hope that's at the top of your mind going into this next holiday season, right? With celebrating the 4th of July, really, instead of thinking about hot dogs and hamburgers and how many soda pops you can throw back over that weekend, or early, like I said, early in the week. Think about what it really means that we have our independence, that we have those founding documents like the Constitution, and how we really essentially it was set up to continue to fight for them, right? It wasn't ever assumed by the founding fathers that this would just be something that was given to us and we fought for it once and we were done. This is the continued battle that we have been given, that we inherited from our founding fathers, right? And we're just seeing it manifest itself in our day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to be that preservation or continuation. It's paper otherwise. It protects us, but we have to continually fight for it, which is both fortunate and unfortunate.
Right. Any closing remarks? Anything you want to bring up before we sign off?
No, I mean, we'll definitely be back before 4th of July, but have a safe and happy and, God bless all those who are celebrating. Certainly for our veteran friends, thank you for your sacrifice and keeping this place safe. Like I said, it's some days it's just overwhelming and other days it's overwhelming and exciting. And to just look at where our cases are advancing and our opportunity to really make a dent in the legal sphere is awesome. And like you said, that happens because of people who pray for us, who financially support us, and people who are willing to also tell their stories and allow us to tell their stories. And, I think some of these declarations, it's kind of like this cathartic, they don't get to write it, but at least their story's out there. And while their name's not in the caption of the case, it's still going to be in a piece of paper that goes to the judge. So hopefully people are feeling a little bit like, they contribute in many ways and they are contributing in all those ways.
Right. And I'm throwing it out there for anybody listening. We gave you the update about what's going on with declarations. There are some stories in there that I'd like to be able to share. If you've already sent a declaration in and you're okay with us sharing that story, whether it be on our website or over a podcast or whatever, just shoot us a quick email saying, hey, you can share my story. We'll redact any personal information. We'll just share your story as a not anecdotal because it's true, or it's something that's right there in front of us and has fact to it, but something we can share with everybody to let them know that they're not alone, that these people that we have actually been affected by this law, and who has been especially. So let us know if you have a story. If you haven't sent in your declaration or you don't necessarily want to send in a declaration, but you have a story, feel free to send it in to us at info@smfjb.org, and we'll see if we can't put that into something and share your story as well.
Absolutely. That's part of what we're here for. Not just to fight for everybody, but to allow people the opportunity to be heard. It's
Right.
one of the most critical rights to be protected.
Right. We don't want to be the silent majority for very long, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Karen suggests we already transitioned to silenced majority, and then soon we'll be the loud majority.
Yeah, let's be as loud as we can. All right. Thanks for tuning in. If you've tuned in, thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
God bless.